For years, Romy lived with a constant, nagging sense of dread, an atmospheric weight in his home that felt like a haunting. Objects would appear in places they didn't belong, and his family's health seemed to wither without explanation. To understand how he got there, you have to look at Chandigarh in the 1990s. As an only child, Romy grew up in a house defined by his parents' constant, turbulent arguments. It left him with a deep, quiet desperation for the kind of stable, peaceful family life he never saw at home. In 2012, he sought a fresh start at a college in Punjab. This is where he met her, a junior who seemed to step directly out of his childhood dreams. She brought him homemade food. He gave her chocolates. It was the beginning of a fixation that would span years. Even after moving to Canada and securing a high-paying job, Romy remained emotionally isolated. He dated, but he never considered marriage. In his mind, he was still waiting for the girl from the college campus in Punjab. Then, in 2015, after years of silence, she sent a message. She didn't just want to catch up, she was ready to marry him immediately. Despite the gap in time, Romy didn't hesitate. Romy had become the ideal target for a specific type of predator. He was financially successful, living thousands of miles away from his support system, and emotionally anchored to a past version of a woman he barely knew. The first meeting between the families set a strange tone. While pushing for an immediate wedding, the girl's parents spent the visit criticizing the size of Romy's childhood home. They claimed their daughter was meant for a palace, yet they were in a rush to marry her off to a man they had just met. When Romy returned to India for the wedding, the demands became more specific. His mother-in-law insisted that the moment he stepped through the airport arrivals gate, yellow mustard seeds had to be tied to his wrist as part of a family tradition. Accidents followed him everywhere. The windshield of his parents' car was smashed. The bus carrying the wedding party crashed. Romy himself was overcome by a sudden, inexplicable physical illness, yet he dismissed it all as the stress of the ceremony. On their wedding night, his bride made a chilling request. She told Romy to act as though he were violently assaulting her. At the time, he brushed it off as a strange fantasy, not realizing he was being coached to create the foundation for future blackmail. In many cases of coordinated manipulation, the early stages involve testing how much a victim will rationalize. By ignoring his own physical sickness and the bizarre behavior of his new in-laws, Romy inadvertently signaled that he was willing to overlook almost anything. Once the couple moved back to Canada, the social circle around Romy began to shrink. His wife insisted he cut ties with his close friends, claiming they didn't respect their marriage. Then the financial pressure began. Her brother began calling from India, claiming the family had fallen into deep debt to pay for the wedding. Romy, believing he was supporting his new family, began wiring thousands of dollars back home. In India, his mother's life was falling apart. She began finding cloves and powders hidden in her fridge and laundry. She spent her nights awake, paralyzed by visions of dark figures standing at her bed. Romy was dealing with his own physical burden, a thick, heavy metal chain his in-laws had given him. He was told it was for protection, but it was physically painful to wear, seemingly tightening around his throat whenever he thought about questioning his wife. His wife began a campaign of constant friction, manufacturing arguments to convince Romy that his parents were toxic and old-fashioned. Eventually, Romy stopped answering his father's calls altogether. The strategy was working on two fronts. By breaking the parents' psyche in India and draining Romy's bank account in Canada, the family had created a closed loop of control that left Romy with no one to trust but his captors. The turning point came when Romy's father secretly took his mother to a spiritual guide. The guide didn't focus on the house, he focused on Romy. He told them the metal chain Romy wore was a physical anchor used to keep his mind in a state of constant, foggy compliance. His mother sought a final cleansing at the Hemkund Sahib Gurudwara. Upon reaching the sacred site, she suffered a violent physical reaction, vomiting a strange green substance. When she finished, the visions that had plagued her for years simply stopped. Romy finally listened to his parents' pleas and removed the chain. For the first time in years, the irritability and mental fog lifted. He started looking at his life with a sudden, sharp clarity. While his wife was out shopping, Romy picked up her iPad. He remembered he had once registered his own thumbprint on the device for a shared app. He pressed his finger to the sensor, and the screen unlocked. Inside, he found a family group chat that laid out the entire timeline. He saw messages from his brother-in-law coaching the wife on how to manufacture fights, lists of how much money they had successfully taken, and detailed instructions for the rituals they were performing against his parents. The family had been so confident in their control over Romy that they never thought to delete their messages. They left behind a time-stamped digital map of their entire operation. After a final confrontation, Romy's wife left the house to stay with a friend, expecting him to come crawling back. Instead, Romy took every one of her belongings into the driveway and set them on fire. As the flames consumed a travel bag she had brought from India years earlier, a hidden compartment popped open. Inside was a small totem, tightly wrapped and filled with sindoor and strange powders. The totem was wrapped in a scrap of the Hoshiarpur Kesari, a regional newspaper from her hometown. The date on the paper proved that this haunting had been physically packed and prepared in India long before she ever set foot in Canada. Romy used the digital evidence to file for divorce and won full custody of his son. Within 6 months, the mother-in-law, the primary architect of the rituals, passed away. Romy's story is a stark reminder that the person you marry brings their entire history and their entire family with them. Background verification isn't a sign of a lack of love. It's the only way to ensure that the person you're trusting isn't just a mask for someone else's agenda.